Good afternoon, music friends. It's Miss Joanne. Today I'm going to read to you a very special story about a very important music composer called Joseph Haydn, and I see Sebastian's come to listen too. So today's March 31st, and Joseph Haydn, the music composer, was born on March 31st, 1732. So today he would be turning 288 years old. So let's just dig into the story and find out about little Joseph Haydn. So it says, little Joseph Haydn loved music. In the evening after work, his father Matthias liked to play the harp. Joseph would sit on his tiny wooden stool with two pieces of wood in his hands. They were his pretend violin, but he really longed to play a real one. One day, when Joseph was just 6 years old, his father's cousin Frank came to visit. Frank was a school teacher, and he also was a musician and taught music. Joseph just loved to listen to cousin Frank play the violin, and after supper, Frank and Joseph's father Matthias and little Joseph played a concert together, with little Joseph rubbing on his two sticks, pretending they were his violin. So let's read on and see what happens next. When Joseph went to bed that evening, I think he was dreaming all about all the beautiful music that he heard. And if you look off in the distance here, you're going to see Joseph's dad and his cousin, and they're talking. And Joseph's dad's cousin, Frank, said, little Joseph seems to really love music, and he seems really good at it. I think he should come and live with me so that he can learn all about music. So if we look at the next picture, here's little Joseph. He's waving goodbye to his mom and dad. He's only 6 years old. So he's a very brave little boy going off to live in a new place. But he really loved music, and he thought, I would love to go and study music. And by the way, what we're hearing in the background is some of Franz Joseph Haydn's music. So here's a picture of little Joseph when he arrives at the music school. So you see him here, he's learning to play a very special musical instrument called the clavier. Looks kind of like a piano. But back then, when Joseph was a little boy, they didn't really have pianos. They had claviers. And if you look on the purple chair over here, you're going to see that Joseph also had a real violin that he was learning to play. So it seems like Joseph was having a lot of fun and enjoying his new home. However, sometimes little Joseph didn't have enough to eat. That's really sad. But little Joseph loved music so much that he didn't even care if he was hungry. And here he is, he's singing in the choir. So Joseph had such a beautiful voice that the school teacher invited Joseph to sing all of the solos. That means he sang all by himself. He must have had a really beautiful voice. One day, a very important visitor came. Let's read about that. Here in this picture, we see Joseph's father's cousin, Frank, his teacher, and the very important visitor wearing that purple suit. And there's little Joseph. And what's happening here? Let's read about it. One day, a very important visitor arrived at the school. He was looking for a boy to sing in his cathedral choir and had heard about the talented young Joseph. The visitor's name was Mr. Reuter. All the boys sang for him, and soon it was Joseph's turn. On the table was a bowl of cherries. Do you see them? And do you remember that little Joseph is actually quite hungry? At the end of Joseph's singing, Mr. Reuter said, "You have a lovely voice. I will choose you as soon as you are 8 years old. You must come and sing in the choir at St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna. And then he gave some cherries to the hungry little boy. I bet they were delicious. Well, here's Joseph at the new cathedral. He'd never seen anything like it. It was so big and so beautiful. And after he sang, his new teacher said, "You sang very well, Joseph. Go to the bakery and have some delicious raisin buns." Ooh, I think Joseph would really love that. By this time, Joseph was actually making up music in his head. That's called composing. He wanted to write it down, but he didn't know how. That's why it's really important to learn how to write your music notes. While other boys were playing together, do you see them outside here playing? Little Joseph would sit in his room and write music notes because he wanted to learn all about music. Now, one day an invitation came from a very important person called Empress Marie Theresa. She lived in a castle. And as you can see here, with these very special ladders called scaffolding, they were doing some repairs or maybe some painting on the castle. And there's little Joseph down at the bottom. What's he done? Oops! After he was told, do not climb the ladders, what did he do? He dared some of his friends to climb up with him. I hope he doesn't get in trouble. "Come down at once," cried the Empress. "You are in trouble." "How dare you?" Oh dear, I wonder what's going to happen. So in the next picture here, we see young Joseph. He's studying his books and working hard, and he wants to learn how to read and write music. He asked his teacher, Mr. Reuter, to teach him, but Mr. Reuter said, "Haven't I got enough to do?" So Joseph wrote a letter to his mother and father. He asked them to help save up money so that he could buy music books. Now we're looking at the next picture here. Even though Joseph was serious about his music studies, he liked to have fun, and he was a little bit sneaky, because in this picture here, what do we see? There's Joseph Haydn. He's got some scissors. Do you see them in his hand over there? And he's going to snip off the ponytail of one of the other boys. Mr. Reuter got so angry about that he sent Joseph away. Oh dear, looks like it's raining. Joseph stood outside the gates of the school. It was cold and dark, and he had nowhere to go. "Hello, Joseph Haydn, what are you doing out here at this time of night?" It was his friend, Mr. Spangler, who used to sing at St. Stephen's. Joseph told his friend what had happened. "You can come and stay in my house with me, but I can't afford to feed you. You will have to play your violin to earn money for food." Everybody loved Joseph's music. Then one day, a letter arrived. See, down here? One day a letter arrived. It was the prince asking Joseph to come and play for him at his castle. In the summer, the prince stayed at his country palace. And so would his musicians, but some of his musicians longed to go home to see their families. And here we see little Joseph. He's a little bit bigger now. He's writing at his desk. He's composing music notes. And the musicians are talking to Joseph about how can we find a way to let the prince let us go home and visit our families. So Joseph said, "I have an idea." That night, as the prince was listening to Joseph's new music, one of the musicians got up, bowed to the prince, and then walked away. Very strange, thought the prince. Then another musician got up and left, and then another. Oh, I get the message, said the prince. What a lovely way to ask for a vacation, and he ordered all of the coaches to take the musicians home immediately. So there he is. This is called the Farewell Symphony that Joseph was writing. And for real, when the musicians play it, one by one, they stop playing and walk off the stage as they're performing. The musicians loved Joseph and called him Papa Haydn. One of his concerts in London, Joseph noticed some people were falling asleep because it was late at night. Joseph loved music, and he loved to compose music, and he also loved tricks. So one evening, Joseph noticed that as people were listening to his music, they were starting to drift off and fall asleep. So Joseph wrote a very special piece of music called the Surprise Symphony. He had a plan to wake them up. And if you tune in tomorrow, I'm going to tell you all about his very special surprise song that he wrote. It's really fun. And how Joseph helped all the people that were listening to his music wake up when they were dozing off listening to his music. Now, it says here that Joseph wrote lots and lots of music, and some of them were really fun. There's one that's called The Bear, one about a hen, one about drums, one about a tick-tock clock, and one about a surprise, and the other one we were talking about farewell. And that's my book about Joseph Haydn. So I hope that you've enjoyed our story this afternoon. I know you can't really see him. Sebastian's here, has been nestled on the couch. Sebastian! Listening to our story too. See you next time, children.